Qualitative research is designed to reveal a target audience's range of behavior and the perceptions that drive it with reference to specific topics or issues. It uses in-depth studies of small groups of people to guide and support the construction of hypotheses. The results of qualitative research are descriptive rather than predictive. Qualitative research methods originated in the social and behavioral sciences such as sociology, anthropology, and psychology. Today, qualitative methods in the field of marketing research include in-depth interviews with individuals, group discussions, diary and journal exercises, and in-context observations. Sessions may be conducted in person, by telephone, via video conferencing, and via the internet. There are several unique aspects of qualitative research which contribute to rich, insightful results. The first is synergy among respondents as they build on each other's comments and ideas. The second is the dynamic nature of the interview or group discussion process, which engages respondents more actively than is possible in more structured survey. The third is the opportunity to probe, enabling the researcher to reach beyond initial responses and rationales. Fourth, the opportunity to observe, record, and interpret nonverbal communication as part of a respondent's feedback, which is valuable during interviews or discussions and during analysis. And lastly, the opportunity to engage respondents in play, such as projective techniques and exercises, overcoming the self-consciousness that can inhibit spontaneous reactions and comments. There are some core activities within qualitative research that we're going to be looking at. The first is literature review. The second is explicating the researcher's belief. The third is the role of the participants. Then the selection of the participants, setting for data collection, approach to data analysis, and lastly, saturation will be further discussed. A literature review is a process of studying what has already been written on a particular topic. A literature review can serve multiple purposes at different stages of the research and writing process. Often it takes place throughout the qualitative research process, since the process itself is iterative and new questions and concepts are arising. The role of a literature review in qualitative research depends on the methodology in use and also on the goals of the research itself, which ironically can generally only be determined by consulting available research literature. Prior to conducting research, a literature review can help in the choice of topic and the design of the question. It may suggest gaps in the literature and under-researched prior theories to be observed or changed in new contexts, contradictions to be further investigated, or themes and processes to keep an eye out for. At the very least, a researcher should have some understanding of where their work is situated in the larger field. Research proposals usually require that the researcher show some knowledge about prior research related to their question. The literature review can also be used to refer to a section of a research report that describes prior research on the topic. Creswell describes 3 basic uses of literature review in a report. The first is that literature is used to frame the problem in the introduction to the essay. Second, the literature is presented in a separate section as a review of the literature. And lastly, the literature is presented in the study at the end. It becomes a basis for comparing and contrasting findings of the qualitative study. Finally, the literature review can also be a standalone form of qualitative research in and of itself. In the quantitative paradigm, efforts have been made to come up with what has been termed meta-analysis, that is, research done on other research. These types of quantitative studies digest all of the available research studies on a particular topic in order to determine the effects of one variable on another directly or indirectly. In the qualitative paradigm, researchers who are trying to summarize extant theory in order to see where theory or research is lacking often conduct a thorough review of the literature. When an author not only summarizes research but takes an analytical stance towards it, the result is often called a critical literature review. And some journals specialize in this particular type of literature review as research, including notably within the field of education. Bracketing is a key part of some qualitative research philosophies, especially phenomenological, and other approaches requiring interviews and observations, such as ethnography. It is also known as mind mapping or phenomenological reduction. This process intends to develop a non-judgmental research team whose objectivity about the participants and the material will not impede the perception of the phenomenon at the heart of the study. There are 4 different roles a research participant can play, each with a different relationship between researcher and participant, and each producing a different kind of finding. The first is that of informant. In ethnography, a participant is related to as an informant. Informants are engaged by the ethnographer to speak in their own language or dialect, providing a model for the ethnographer to imitate, so that the ethnographer can learn to use the native language in the way the informants do. The informant is related to as a teacher. What is learned is how the participant conceptualizes and verbalizes his experience. Informants give the researcher not answers to fixed, predetermined questions, but the questions themselves. Informants help define what the researcher needs to learn in subsequent research. The second type are those of subject. Subjects are participants in social science research upon whom hypotheses are tested. Investigators are not primarily interested in discovering the cultural knowledge of the subjects. They seek to confirm or disconfirm a specific hypothesis by studying the subject's responses. They work with subjects begin with preconceived ideas. Work with informants begin with a naive ignorance. Subjects do not define what is important for the investigator to find out, informants do. Another type are respondents. A respondent is any person who responds to a survey questionnaire or to queries presented by an investigator. Survey research with respondents almost always employs the language of the social scientists. The questions arise out of the social scientist culture. Ethnographic research, on the other hand, depends more fully on the language of the informant. The questions arise out of the informant's culture. And lastly, we have an actor. An actor is someone who becomes the object of observation in a natural setting. As with subjects and respondents, when participants are related to as actors, the terms of the description of the actor's behavior are those of the researcher, not of the participant. It should be noted, however, that in ethnographic research, participants are interviewed as they are observed, which means the participant is still understood primarily as an informant. The actor-informant teaches the researcher through showing and explaining in his own terms the significance of his actions. A proposive sample, also commonly called a judgmental sample, is one that is selected based on the knowledge of a population and the purpose of the study. The subjects are selected because of some characteristic. Field researchers are often interested in studying extreme or deviant cases, that is, cases that don't fit into regular patterns of attitudes and behaviors. By studying the deviant cases, researchers can often gain a better understanding of the more regular patterns of behavior. This is where proposive sampling often takes place. For instance, if a researcher is interested in learning more about the students at the top of their class, he or she is going to sample those students who fall into the top of the class category. They will be propositively selected because they meet a certain characteristic. Proposive sampling can be very useful for situations where you need to reach a targeted sample quickly and where sampling for proportionality is not the main concern. The analysis of qualitative research involves aiming to uncover and/or understand the big picture by using the data to describe the phenomenon and what it means. Both qualitative and quantitative analysis involves labeling and coding all of the data in order that similarities and differences can be recognized. Responses from even an unstructured qualitative interview can be entered into a computer in order for it to be coded, counted, and analyzed. The qualitative researcher, however, has no system for pre-coding. Therefore, a method of identifying and labeling or coding data needs to be developed that is bespoke for each research, which is called content analysis. Content analysis can be used when qualitative data has been collected through either interviews, focus groups, observation, documentary analysis, or content analysis. Researchers commonly seek to collect data to explain a phenomenon of interest and then construct theories from the collected data. Theory construction takes place as the data are being collected. Saturation is the point in data collection where no new or relevant information emerges with respect to the newly constructed theory. Hence, a researcher looks at this as the point at which no more data needs to be collected. When the theory appears to be robust with no gaps or unexplained phenomena, saturation has been achieved and the resulting theory is more easily constructed.